Good morning, and thank you for joining us for a new version of Coffee Talk. It's a maiden voyage for just a quick analytics coffee talk. For those of you who've been on our CECL coffee talks, which, again, I think hopefully you found very successful. We thought as we now kind of move forward, and many of our subscribers who came to us for CECL may be unaware or just not as familiar with some of the other tools that are available to them in QwickAnalytics. We thought we would introduce, potentially a new series of coffee talks where we focus in on the other aspects of QwickAnalytics. So today's the maiden voyage. Be patient with us; it might be a little bumpy, but we're going to try to again make this part of our lineup going into 2024. My name's Sean O'Brien, the president of QuickRate, and as always, I'm pleased to be joined by Steve Huntington. Steve, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us today with this familiar format, but a more expanded list of topics that we can discuss and take questions on. I'm Steve Huntington, the Director of Analytics here at QuickRate and QwickAnalytics. I've been working with community banks my entire career and everything from strategic planning and valuation to M&A and capital type work. And I've been working with Sean at QuickRate here for over a decade now.
Yeah, time flies.
You know,
That's amazing. Thanks, Steve. So again, for those of you who are new, the Q&A box and the chat feature are the way we'll monitor that throughout the presentation, and either jump in with questions throughout or certainly take them at the end. So we will probably to a certain extent be bouncing back and forth between a PowerPoint and the live site. So again, just bear with us. But again, this feel free to share any comments afterwards, because like I said, we want to make this part of our ongoing lineup of coffee talks. And again, that's really what these were born out of. I think most importantly is we wanted to provide a forum for our users to ask questions in a kind of a very comfortable format. We want to make sure that you and your team, for our subscribers, are getting the full value from QwickAnalytics. And if you're a prospect or new to us, we want to ensure let you know that if you do come on as a subscriber, we're here to support and make sure you get the most out of your subscription as best we possibly can. Again, I'm going to ask for you to indulge us just with a few questions. We've kind of started to make this a little bit more of a staple in the coffee talks. Just curious, for your thoughts on a number of topics that just kind of give us a flavor of where you're at, but B, too, as we think about new offerings and potential enhancements to our site. So I'm going to launch a few polling questions here. Right. Just 5 questions today. So the first one is, have you performed a credit stress test in any fashion, portfolio or loan level, in the past 12 months? This is a feature within QwickAnalytics. We've certainly seen from our users, a large increase in reports run this year. So again, excuse me.
bless you.
Just excuse me. Thank you. Just kind of see what everybody's doing. So this is interesting. Yeah. So great. 64% of you have run one. Let me share these results. In the last 12 months, 36% no. So again, this is something that we've seen a noticeable uptick in our users, but also anecdotally hearing it being commented on or requested by or asked about by regulators. So we definitely wanted to see what everyone was thinking on that this morning. The second question is around peer analysis. Do you currently perform any peer analysis at your bank? Again, just a simple yes or no. And this is great. So we'll go ahead and end this one. This is good to see as well. 80% of you are performing some type of peer analysis at the bank, 20% no. So again, thank you for responding there. Here, another one on net interest margin. Has your net interest margin increased or decreased in the past 12 months? Give us a few more seconds. Okay, all right. This one, let me share those results. 33% have seen it increased, 42% have seen it decrease, and 24% about the same. So again, thank you for participating in that question. Just a couple more here, just around local deposit growth. Do you believe you'll be able to grow your local deposits during 2024? So I know from our coffee talks, deposit erosion is still a big issue for most community banks. So as we look forward to next year, really curious about what everyone's expectations are about, trying to recapture some of those deposits. All right, so
Well, Sean, you're going to tell us what's going to happen next year with interest rates, right? And that'll help us figure that one out. Looking forward to that part of the presentation.
Yeah. Right after I buy my crystal ball, I'll have it. All right, so we'll share this one. 64% is think you will, so that's very encouraging. 36% no. So good to see and see that. So let me get to our final question around enhancements, and here you can select multiple. But what additional tools or further enhancements would you like to see us provide in the future? The ones we put in here are interest rate sensitivity, liquidity, stress test, budgeting, loan level, CECL, and then certainly anything we don't have here, feel free to put into the chat section as well. So we'll just give this a few seconds. This is great. So share these results. So interest rate sensitivity, liquidity stress, loan level, CECL, all three kind of at the top of the list. So those are very, very helpful. We appreciate your participation, and we will certainly many of these we're already working on. So that's good to see that there'll be interest for those enhancements. All right, so let me end those polls. Right, whoops, too fast. Again, we're constantly trying to improve the site. This is just a list of some of the things that have been done over the last 12 months. It is
that fifth one is still up for me, Sean. I don't know if you closed all the way out of that poll.
All right, bear with me 1 second here.
I guess I could click the close button, but usually it does it automatically. There we go.
Gone now?
Yep.
All right. A number of improvements. Again, we try to be thoughtful about this, not only in what we're doing, but then just trying to make sure we're communicating that effectively and making sure we're given the proper time to test it. So again, I think we're never going to be finished with QwickAnalytics. We're always going to be looking to put something new in here, but this is just an example of some of the things that we've done. And then here's a few that we'll be looking forward to next year. Steve, anything you want to add, since you're kind of at the driver's seat of a lot of these?
If you scroll back to the recent ones, one of the really bigger ones there is the addition of credit union data. We made the decision after starting to work with some credit unions on CECL that we had access to all the same type of data for credit unions we have for banks. They file call reports. They're, as you know, a different style of call report, but still have all that complete, comprehensive financial data. And so we've added that to the platform. So when you're browsing for different institutions on the interactive site, you can search for and look at financial highlights for credit unions. You can use in the Excel, it's integrated into the Excel add-in and our branch map, and not our branch, but our mapping software as well. So if you're curious about looking at things like your deposit market and looking at branches of our institutions around you, you can also see credit union institutions as well now. And for upcoming, I'll show you a little bit of this. Some of these are already in progress, and you can see the beginnings of them on the site right now. for example, a comprehensive data dictionary auditing capability, meaning that if you're curious about how we're calculating ratios, or you want to see exactly what methodology we use for averaging something, or for where on the call report a certain ratio components come from, this tool is going to be really helpful in doing that. We're working on adding additional economic data. You know, we have some economic data that's available when you're looking at everything from CECL analysis to general credit analysis. And we're taking information from the Fed, where, as you know, that they put out those adverse and severely adverse scenarios for the larger institutions, the DFAST institutions, for credit stress testing every year. And those economic trends have a lot of capability of doing projection type analysis with, and go out into the future. And so we're trying to integrate some of that so you can have some good economic projections that you can use in trying to budget for credit trends in the future. Sean?
All right. Thank you, Steve. I should have added, for some reason, for all these, I always forget to say this. We will send out a copy of today's slide deck and a link to the recording in an email that will likely go out on Monday afternoon. That will also contain the results of the polling questions. So just an FYI that those will come to you. Again, QwickAnalytics is one of the three really divisions of QuickRate. We've got the marketplace, which most of you know, non-brokered CD funding and investing, QwickAnalytics that we're going to talk a little bit about today. And then our newest division is IntelliCredit, where we do a number of things, but we perform third-party loan reviews, but also have built an application for you and your credit team to use for administration, stress testing, loan level analysis as a portfolio analytical tool. So again, we'll be talking a lot more about that next year as well, probably introducing a Coffee Talk series around it as well. When we think about QwickAnalytics, we really think about it three different ways, really, of primary areas of focus. When we started QwickAnalytics, it was really built around bank and peer performance. We started as a report generating service that included a report, which is still one of our most popular, the Bank Performance Report Card. We introduced Peer Watch Trends and Peer Watch reports. We have a number of matrices. And then we also have a huge section on interactive bank analysis. So we take the call report information for every bank in the country and put it into what we hope you find to be very useful ways to navigate information about the bank. And then, we have a complete suite of regulatory tools, most notably the CECL solver and the credit stress test. But we do have a liquidity report. We have, a lot of ways to do research, not only on credit, but just the bank industry in general. And then we have an Excel add-in tool as well. So a lot to unpack. Part of the reason why we wanted to begin doing these coffee talks, we know, our users are clearly using it for CECL. They use it a lot more for the stress test, a lot of peer reporting, the bank performance report card. But we just, again, a lot of Reg F due diligence done through QwickAnalytics for correspondent banks. But again, it's a tool that you don't have to master on day one, but the more you look, the more you'll find. And so we thought, hey, if we can kind of help in that endeavor, then that's what we want to do, and make sure that we're available to answer questions or explain how this different things work, but then certainly take suggestions on what can make it even better. One of my favorite sayings is we like to aggregate data so you can analyze it. We find or believe there's very little value in you at the bank trying to aggregate all this information. Your time and energy should be focused on analyzing the data. So that's really one of the big thing we do in a lot of cases. We're aggregating data from a number of sources to put it into dashboards and reports that you can kind of click on 24/7 and access and utilize. There's a lot of benefits. Again, I think the data aggregation is one. I think consistent framework is two. I think for those of you who are subscribers, I think the value proposition we make is that, at QuickRate, we've always tried to make things easy to use and affordable to use. And I think we've done that with QwickAnalytics as well. But it does just put a tremendous amount of information at your bank. And again, one of our kind of primary tenets is, we want you to be able to see your absolute performance over time and then be able to make a quick comparison to a peer group without really having to do much of anything. And that's hopefully what you'll see in some of the upcoming slides. So when you log into QwickAnalytics, everybody comes to a homepage that looks something like this. It'll have your bank name. It'll have the different sections for regulatory tools, peer reports, data and research, the credit unions. All of these are clicks to go to whatever page you want. We include capital market information, including M&A information and information on bank stocks that trade. And then we're also aggregating data and information from the FDIC, the OCC, the Fed, and the St. Louis Fed, their FRED site. So a very comprehensive, kind of approach. And then you're really just off navigating and clicking. Steve, anything you want to take or add from here?
Nope, not particularly on this page.
Okay. Again, everything's just, again, you would click on any of these links and you'd move on to the next page. Whoops. There we go. An example is, bank universe at a glance, a number of ways to do research. The idea is that when you click on it, it would take you to a particular state's banks. It would provide a number of different overview metrics that you can sort high to low, low to high. But then again, you could click on any bank's name and go into their more detailed call report information. Steve, again, anything for you want to add?
Yeah, and the way to think about this page, it's just an interactive spreadsheet, right? Where you can quickly look at a market, scroll, see what the institutions in that market look like, do some quick sorting and filtering by financial performance metrics that you're interested in. You can click through on any of those lists to go to the individual institution and dig deeper. This is all the same type of information that's also available in our Excel add-in. So this kind of just a quick and easy way to do some filtering and get some metrics right here in the interactive environment. But if you want to dig deeper than this, it's very easy to get this type of information and infinitely more by doing it directly in the Excel add-in as well, which we can show you guys.
Great. Another really popular feature is every June, you and every other bank complete a summary of deposit data. We get that as well and make that available to you so you can see not only your current market share, but a longer term market share. Again, this is a very convenient way to create a peer group for many of our users. Steve, again, anything you'd like to point out here?
Not on the deposit market shares.
Okay. We do make a distinction between all banks and QCBI banks. Throughout QwickAnalytics, you'll see a distinction around QCBI banks. That's really our acronym for the QwickAnalytics Community Bank Index. We essentially took the FDIC's definition of a community bank and applied that to the bank universe. We made a few additional qualifiers, but the idea is you can compare yourself to every bank in the country. But if there's instances where you want to just see other community banks, you can filter by those. And in the deposit market share, that's one of the ways or one of the things we do for you.
That's a great way to look at market share on a community bank only basis, right? If you want to see what, not just kind of ignoring all the big banks and subtracting all of their deposits and just tracking how you're performing from a market share standpoint compared to other community banks, you can actually see, oh, well, the FDIC says I have 1% market share because I'm in Charlotte and Bank of America's here, right? So you can subtract those and say, well, I've got 23% community bank market share, and that's actually increased over the last 2 years. So it's a very kind of 2.0 way to look at market share up and above the kind of FDIC all-in perspective.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Here's just another example of it. As I mentioned, these little check boxes that within our tool would allow you to create a peer group amongst those banks that you'd like. And then you can see, again, a current market share and a multi-year trend kind of laid out for you. Like Steve said, in this case, this one includes all banks, but you could filter out the larger bank in this case.
And just keep in mind, this is not the primary way that most institutions are creating peer groups. That's just kind of a shortcut. We realize that a lot of people, we have a whole page specifically for managing and building new custom peer groups, which gives you a lot of different ways and filters you can use to build peer groups. We thought we found a lot of people were wanting to go to their market share page and just kind of check off the banks to quickly build a peer group that way. So it's just kind of a shortcut to building to one method of creating a peer groups.
The next slide here, you can see circled at the top, My Bank. So the navigation within QwickAnalytics is really pretty easy. Again, everything's designed to be point and click. The two headers at the top, the icon for QwickAnalytics and My Bank, you can always click on, and the icon brings you back to your homepage. The My Bank takes you to your bank level information, which we see an example of now. And again, this is how we present all the bank information for every bank in the country.
Maybe I should be sharing. Should I go to sharing my
yeah, let's go
the
ahead.
interactive at this
I'll
point?
stop and you can go ahead to the interactive. Yeah.
Sure. Let's see here.
All right, I see your page.
Excellent. So I'm going to click right up here. I can click on, and you can click on My Bank or your actual bank name. We're going to use Camden National Bank up in Maine as our guinea pig for today. Hope they don't mind. So I click on My Bank. And this brings up sort of the your financial homepage for your institution, or keep in mind, same exact view for any other bank that you want, or holding company or credit union that you want in the country. By searching for a different institution here and then choosing it, you can get their My Bank or their home financial page. But by default, it comes up with your institution. Sean, so the couple things I want to point out about the navigation here as well, if you're not familiar, is all of these different financial pages you can toggle to, and you can choose if you want to view your data on an annual basis or on a year-to-date or a quarterly basis. You can certainly go back in time. Let's say I want to choose, let's just go to the income statement, for example. It's a helpful way of, most of the pages have this format. We have a couple summary charts up top that are completely customizable. So if I want to look at, let's say, we already picked the net interest margin, I can do that and it'll update. You can choose quarterly data instead of annual data. And now you can see we have 6 quarters of data on the summary charts and 6 quarters of data in the actual table down below. You can choose your peer group. We can be a UBPR peer group. Our QCBI, that's kind of our hybrid. It's still a standardized peer group, but it's all the community banks in your state by default. So this would be Maine since these guys are in Maine. And then here's a list of all the custom peer groups that I have built. I obviously build lots of custom peer groups. And that data, as soon as you choose a different peer group, not only will the peer medians and your percentile ranks obviously update, but also the peer data lines on the charts up there as well. You'll notice from any of these pages, a couple things that are ubiquitous throughout our entire platform is the ability to get the data the way you want to see it, right? Pretty much within a single click. So if you like to look at this in Excel, or you want to export it to PowerPoint or turn it into a quick PDF, or even just print this page off in a way that doesn't, cut off lines or rows or columns or anything else. These are all very clean and easy tools to use to single click manage the data on the page as you see fit. Sean?
Yeah, and I think this just shows an example again that you can see your data over time. As Steve pointed out, 6 quarters or 6 years in immediate comparison to a peer group. We do have all the call report pages and holding company information available to you as well. And then as Steve has put up here, the NIM page, right? We try to give you options depending on the audience you might be presenting to, where we do provide a lot of table organization. But if you're looking for something a little bit more concise, we have performance matrices, credit matrices, a NIM matrix that really just kind of shows you versus a peer group in a much more concise and potentially easier on the eyes format. So really trying to make it or give you the ability to make sure the information you're sharing is having the impact and meeting the appetite for the intended audience.
Couple things to point out here. Obviously, we're not going to go through all of these pages on today's call. And just a reminder, if you have any questions about anything you're seeing, type them into the chat right now so we can jump right into answering those questions. Don't be shy. We're certainly not. Down here, some people notice this. Some people don't really realize it's here. But in addition to all the financial data that we've templated, that we've created ratios and calculated using our methodologies, you can also go right back to the raw data directly from the call report. So if I click on this, here are all the schedules from the call report. If I click on one, schedule RC, your balance sheet, this gives you your raw, unadulterated data directly from the call report. So if you want to say, well, that ratio doesn't seem like it's quite right, you can see how it's calculated, and then you can actually go back to all the raw data that was used in order to do the calculation. So this just saves you from pretty much ever having to go to the FDIC site and download another call report ever again. It's a heck of a lot easier of a way to visualize just the call report data in its format over time for your institution or for any other institution that you want in the country. In addition to all these pages, like I show the net interest margin pages because they're relatively new and timely right now. But also one of our newer pages that we haven't spoken about much yet is we've always had deposit market share. Again, Sean showed you from the homepage how to just pull up market share that's not focused on one institution. It's just kind of a comprehensive market share table for a particular state, city, zip code, county. But if you click on deposit market share here, it's going to do one that's centric around your institution, right? It's going to summarize all the markets that you're in, how many offices, what your market share is in each of those different markets that you're in, whether it's county level or MSA or state or city. And then down here, you'll see kind of the same thing you saw on the standard market share page from the FDIC, where it's organized and sorted by institution, and you can still look at multi-year trends and build peer groups from that. Or, like I said, if we want to look at a competitor, let's say we want Maine Community Bank, any bank name that's highlighted and underlined there is a hyperlink, and it goes directly to their financial page. So you can really bounce around and look not only at all the detail for your institution, but for any institution. And in addition, well, the recent addition is what we call deposit demographics. Same idea as the market share, but instead we're looking at other additional new demographic data that we didn't used to have on the platform. So we have population, income statistics, unemployment, education, age, and you can do it again at the county or state level for your institution and bounce around and research that data as well. If I head back to, you don't have to search for your bank. You can always click on My Bank, and that'll bring you back to your institution's homepage there. Sean?
Great. And then I'm just going to take it back to the slide deck for a second.
Sure.
Going to keep moving through those. We've probably touched on a few of these, so we may be able to move through here. So one of the things we do is, again, we have that immediate comparison to the peer groups, as Steve touched on, showing the peer medians and the percentile ranks. We touched on just, again, some of this information. So these slides are here for you for after the fact. We're not going to cover all of them, but just, again, want to highlight the different points of information. Steve touched on the fact that all the pages have graphs at the top that are customizable, and then all the links you can just kind of click on and navigate as you see fit. All of these tabs are available for you to run as a report package. So each of these individual links, if you decided you wanted to put 3, 4, or 5 of those together, you could create a report. We format all the pages, so the presentation's always there for you, and essentially we'll take everything you're visualizing on the screen and put it into a hard copy if you choose to do that. The different reports we have available to you can be accessed a number of different ways. The drop down, they're listed at the top, they're listed. Again, multiple ways to do this. As I also mentioned, we do a number of matrices. Steve and I and many of you may be very interested in as much information and detail of numbers as you might like. But when you go to present it to the board, they may not like all that information kind of presented in that way. So what we did with these matrices was try to take that same overview information, but put it into something more concise and more visually appealing. So this is an example of Camden's bank numbers versus the other community banks in Maine. But now we show you where the bank's numbers are listed within the matrix. We show you the peer median value, the bottom 20th percentile value, the top 20th, and again, where the bank ranks with their percentile rank over here to the right. So we took a number of pages and really just put it into one concise, visual sheet. Steve,
Yeah,
anything
it's
here?
it's a great heat map of performance over time. And when I say over time, I think what can be really helpful and impactful, especially with a board type presentation, is pulling this up and then pulling it up on a quarterly basis, or this quarter versus 4 quarters ago, a year ago, and flipping between the two, so you can visually see where your relative performance has been shifting in a positive way and in a negative way over time. It really makes it very easy to to pick out the areas where you're excelling and improving, and the areas that may be going in a direction that you want to jump on and switch. And again, it's less, this visually is less about absolute performance and more about relative performance. So obviously choosing an intelligent local peer group is going to make this much more impactful and useful.
Yeah, and this is this has a number of applications, but certainly a number of banks use this for their strategic planning session. A lot of those sessions start off with SWOT analyses,
Yep.
and like as Steve touched on, right, we're always focused on absolute performance, right? That's critical, but relative performance can be very insightful as well. And sometimes these relative comparisons to other peer groups, particularly if the peer group is really well defined and meaningful to you, it just gives you an honest assessment, again, of what your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats might be. So again, a lot of our banks use this as part of their strategic planning sessions. We have a number of consultants who do strategic planning. They use this as their starting point to understand a bank's strengths and weaknesses prior to conducting those strategic planning sessions. So again, relative comparisons and analyses can be tremendously valuable. One of the other pages that we introduced, I believe it was this year, can't even remember if it was this year or last.
Yeah, it was
but,
early this year, I believe.
Yeah, early this year. This year went by so quickly I can't even remember. But one of the things, again, this actually started with a user request. Obviously the Camel metrics and analyses are confidential, but certainly within the call report, we can see items that contribute to what's going into those ratings, and felt like we could give you and show you, how those things have trended over in this case, 4 years or even the last 4 quarters, indicating whether they're getting stronger or weaker, for the bank. And so, again, just a quick way to kind of better understand what might be driving potential changes in any of those ratings. Steve, anything to add here?
Nope.
Okay.
Oh, I mean, yeah, okay, there. Yeah, I was going to say we have a couple different ways of visualizing a lot of these types of pages. We want to show you that data so you can see it over time and you can utilize it or export it to Excel and then create your own visualizations. But we've had a lot of traction and a lot of interest in these more visual kind of color coded heat mappy type presentations of the data as well. So you can toggle between the trend analysis, which we showed on the last slide, and this peer ranking, which again, it's all relative, right? It's taking those ratios that probably go into the C in your Camels rating and showing where you are compared to your peer group at any given point in time. That's on the left, and on the right, how that trend has changed relative to your peer group.
Great. Again, we touched on, this was introduced this summer, the net interest margin decomposition. Again, most of us are NIM is really what drives our earnings. And so we thought, again, this was an opportunity to give you a way to understand how both rate and volumes might be impacting your NIM positively or negatively. And again, went the extra step of saying, all right, we'll show it to you, breaking down the contributory line items from the call report, but then also visually showing you that on a relative heat map. So Steve, take it away. Anything to add here?
Yeah, no, just you'll notice the metric all the way on the right. That last column is what we call margin contribution, and it's a really great kind of 2.0 level type metric that we've seen used in some regulatory research documents, and we thought we would use it here on our platform. And it shows the impact of any one component of your margin, any one of your yields, or any one of your costs, how much its contribution to the change in your margin. So it's helpful to see, well, my margin decreased by 20 basis points, but it looks like my yield on securities was actually a bright spot and had a positive overall impact on my margin, whereas my yield on certain loans had a negative overall impact. And we describe how that ratio is calculated and how it can be helpful, but I think it's a really great one that you don't see very often. Obviously the change due to rate and volume is something that you see on SEC documents a lot in 10Qs and Ks and whatnot. So that's more standardized, but we thought that margin contribution could be a great additional way to think about how those rates have impacted your margin.
Yeah, and again, I think this is something that a lot of our banks and their ALCO committees, have used as a starting point. As you can see at the top here, you can pick your kind of comparative periods. I know I'm a director in a small community bank in Illinois. We've incorporated this into our ALCO meetings as a starting point to, again, try to better understand not only what's driving our NIM one way or the other, but then again, strategically, what can we do to try to sustain or even grow our NIM going forward. So again, this can be has been helpful for banks, and I think will continue to be as we move forward. The next matrix is the one we call a credit matrix. Again, the call report can't tell you a lot about credit, right? These are often things that the horses are already out of the barn, if you'll utilize that analogy. But really, we felt like there were three things you could see on a relative basis from the call report about credit, right? One is, again, just the current risk in your portfolio, and we define those really as non-performers. Again, that's kind of rear view mirror type of stuff, but nevertheless, you can see that on a relative basis. The second thing is we kind of define portfolio risk, and that really speaks to the amount of leverage and concentrations that might reside in your loan portfolio. And then the third area is capital or persistence power, which we define as your ability to absorb losses through earnings, reserves, and capital. And so, again, just a relative comparison of those three different pieces of information. But then you can, excuse me, kind of see how you compare to, again, a very unique set of peer groups. But, again, just really is an honest assessment on a relative basis where you are. Now, I will say the portfolio risk part of it is, again, important to note that it's relative. Like, for instance, at our little bank, we want to lend money. So our concentrations and growth rates often end up having us be in the red zone. Sometimes banks will infer that means that they're being, that's bad. This is just, again, a relative comparison. Your strategic plan, if it's to lend like ours is, that's where we want to be. We want to be growing loans. We're going to lend in what we know. And so we're willing to accept the additional scrutiny that we might get for having concentrations, because that's our area of expertise, and we're willing to live with it. So again, it just kind of gives you that visual heat map. Steve, anything here?
No, and like I said, red doesn't always red is a flag for you to consider, because it's significant. There's nothing wrong with significant growth if you're have the ability in your market to grow rapidly, but after a certain level of growth, beyond a certain speed of growth, it becomes something that regulators are gonna look at more closely. And so we want to flag and be cognizant of the fact that we're growing significantly faster than our peers, and that's something that our regulators are going to ask us about, and it's going to be something that we take into account in considering credit risk. So that's kind of why we designed it this way.
Steve, we had a question come in about what the risk multiplier is there in
Yeah, it's just within, we're throwing a bunch of different ratios, right, out in that fall within these three different categories of credit risk. And some of those ratios may be more or less relevant to your institution. And so you can weight them a little higher or lower. We threw out there where we thought of all those ratios, which ones were relatively a little bit more critical or important than other ones. But it's a scale from 0 to 10, where you can go through and say, I think these couple ratios, I know my examiner is always looking at, or we think they're really important. So we're gonna put that a 7 or 8 or a 10. And it's just a subjective view of, from this ratio, we don't think it has any importance, we're going to put a 0, to we think it's one of the most important, we're going to put a 10. And that just, as you change those risk multipliers, You can have all tens, you can have all, well, if you put all zeros, it won't be very helpful, but you can, it's not like, there isn't a very, very specific matrix of how you can put those in there. You can plug them in anywhere from 0 to 10, and it just recalculates it relatively weights those different ratios, right? Depending upon which ones you give more weight and which ones you give less weight.
Great. And it's also important to note throughout QwickAnalytics, certainly any gray boxes with blue numbers in them are fields that you can override. So as Steve said, right, if you want to recalibrate this based on your own assessment, you can certainly do that.
Blue text is always the indicator, right? If the text or the number or whatever or anything anywhere on the platform is blue, either you can click on it, like if it's a bank name, or you can override it or change it if it's a value.
Great, thank you, Steve. Next up is we've talked a lot about creating your own custom peer groups. Here's an opportunity. This is and Steve, maybe this is where we'll take it back to the live site. You can kind of show them the filtering process of the peer groups. But, we want to make it as easy for you to create as many peer groups as you'd like. As Steve indicated earlier, they follow you around in QwickAnalytics. So once you've created them, they're available for you to come back in and edit or delete. You can create them at the bank level or the holding company level. Steve will touch on the difference between a specific peer group and an automatic peer group. But we do have a screener that really allows you to, build the peer groups in the way that, are most meaningful to you. Steve, do you want to take the screen now? You
ready? Yeah, let's go. Let's do that. All right. All right, back here on the home page. On that, what we call, I guess, Microsoft would call it a ribbon up top here. So wherever you are on the site, you're going to have this ribbon up top so you can quickly get to these things. One of them is custom peer groups. When we click on custom peer groups, as you can tell, again, I have lots and lots of peer groups I've built. This would look, whichever ones you have saved would be showing up here for your institution. Let's say we wanted to create a new peer group for banks. Two options, specific and automatic. There is a discussion here if you hover over the little question mark there as to what the difference between the two is. But basically, a specific peer group is more along the lines of what you would typically see in other platforms, where you plug in search criteria, whether it's, I want all the community banks, 100 and 500 million in assets in my state or in these 5 counties. And then you get a list. And from that list, you check off the ones that you want to add to your peer group. It's a static peer group, meaning you've chosen all of the individual banks, the exact list of individual banks that you want in this peer group. That's a specific peer group. An automatic peer group is one where you say, hey, I want these group of criteria, just, all the banks in my state between $200 and $400 million in assets. But that obviously that list of institutions that meet those criteria is going to change over time. The list of institutions that were between 2 and 400 million 10 years ago is not the same list as you have today. An automatic peer group, when you look at data, will recalculate or reconstitute that peer group for every single financial period that you're looking at data. And this is important because let's say you're running a credit stress test, for example, is somewhere where I really suggest building automatic peer groups. Because with ours or any other credit stress test, you're looking back in time, looking at, say, the last credit crisis, right? 2009 to 2011 plus or minus. And you're answering the basic question, if my bank as it is today, if it were to experience that level of credit issues again in the future, what effect would it have on my P&L and on my capital? In order to do that, you want to see how bad things really got during the last credit crisis. So you're going to create a peer group and you're going to go back in time all the way to, let's say, 2008 or 2009, and track and see with your peer group, what kind of credit losses did they really have over that time. If you chose 20 institutions that exist today and then you drag them back 15 years, what are you going to be missing? You're going to be missing some of the institutions that actually had the worst credit quality during the last crisis because they failed or were merged out of existence, right? So if you're only looking at institutions that made it, so to speak, through the last crisis, you're going to have sort of rose-colored glasses on when you're considering really how bad it really got, right, during the last credit crunch, especially in markets like Florida, Georgia, California, et cetera. And so with an automatic peer group, if you it would go back and say, these are the institutions that existed in 2009, and I'm going to calculate their credit quality, for example, in 2009. And so it's a more advanced way of creating a peer group. The constituents of that peer group change over time so that they're always meeting your criteria. And it even includes old failed banks and institutions that would have been a part of the peer group in the past. So that's kind of how the automatic peer groups work. One of the other benefits of it is it's self-maintaining. It's kind of self-cleaning, so to speak, right? Let's say you go back and you pull up your specific peer group from 2 years ago, and you want it to be only banks under 500 million, and now 3 of the ones you chose are 750 million, or they were acquired, or something else happened. You got to keep going back in and checking to make sure that the banks in the peer group are the same. With an automatic peer group, it takes care of that for you. At any given time, it's still the banks that only still meet your criteria. So 2 slightly different ways of considering peer groups. But let me create a specific one here for banks. And you can still search by individual institution here, or you can actually say, hey, well, I'm going to start with my UBPR peer group and then check the ones off that I want, right? Or you can say, well, I want all the banks in Alabama in these, let's say these 8 counties that have assets between 100 million and $1 billion. And I could also say, I want to exclude savings banks, or I want to exclude S Corps or C Corps. I'll leave them in for now. And then I can search, and boom, there's there's only 3. I picked some small counties in Alabama, but there's 3 banks that currently meet those criteria. And I can say, oh, I want all 3 of them, or I only want 2 of them. And then you can save that peer group and it'll show up on your list. There's also ways to do use some more advanced metrics. So these are custom filters. So if you want to go deeper than just, geography and size, and you want to say, hey, I kind of want to do some compound searches here. I'm curious about banks that are really big on C&I lending and are having problems with their margin. So let's get rid of the geographic restrictions and go down here and say, so you just start typing in any field you want. And it searches our entire data dictionary, entire database of fields to say, all right, C&I loans, percent composition. So I want C&I banks that have more than, let's say, 25% C&I loans and have a margin. Let's say I want a margin less than 4%. Add filters and search. There are 119 banks currently in the United States that have more than 25% C&I loans and have a margin of under 4%. Obviously, we need to add some significant digits there to the margin. But now from that list, I can go and check off the ones that I'm looking for. It becomes a great filtering tool for sort of advanced filters, compound search and filter capabilities. Sean?
Great. Thank you, Steve.
Yep.
So yeah, we're huge fans of peer groups. Make as many as you'd like and continue to use them throughout.
And as Sean said, they follow you throughout the platform. So not only on the interactive pages, you'll always have a drop-down box where you can change and choose your custom peer group, and then it'll show all the peer data for that. Even if you go into Excel and you open up the Excel add-in and you want to do some more advanced analysis in Excel, you can find your custom peer group. As soon as you've created it and saved it, you can go to Excel 5 seconds later and pull up your custom peer group and throw them right into to Excel. So it follows you pretty much instantaneously throughout the platform.
Great. As we touched on at the top, right, many of you are our subscribers, kind of came to us for CECL. There are additional tools. Again, we've seen a large uptake in our credit stress test, throughout this year. Just want to touch on this real quick. Again, this is something I think over the next 12 months, many of us will be asked by our auditors or regulators to perform some type of stress testing. Again, I think our immediate benefit for you is effectively we've already run one on your bank. There's some, obviously some inputs that you can customize, but the OCC was very outspoken a decade ago about how community banks could perform stress testing utilizing call report information. With that guidance and along with guidance from the Fed, we reconstructed that in QwickAnalytics. And so here is an example, and Steve, I'll let you talk through this.
Yeah, so for the credit stress test, we perform 3 completely separate and independent tests that work hand in hand. The first test is what we call the peer group loss experience. That's where I think I already kind of alluded to it when we were talking about custom peer groups, but it's where we're going back in time and looking at how your peers performed in healthy environments and very unhealthy credit environments at the segment level. And then we apply your peers' experience to your loan portfolio, your current loan portfolio going forward. So we can answer the basic question: if your portfolio, the way it currently looks, the way it's currently structured, if it were to perform going forward over the next couple years, like your peers did in healthy and very unhealthy environments in the past, what would be the pro forma impact on your P&L and your capital? So it is a projection model. We are projecting earnings and capital going out over a 2-year time horizon moving forward. In test 1, we're using your peers' experience as our guide for how bad it would get, so to speak. And in test 2, it's the same exact steps, same methodology, but we're using your experience, ignoring your peers and how they fared, but how did you fare during the last credit cycle and during a recent, more healthy period? And if you were to perform like that going forward, what would be the pro forma impact? And then finally, the third test is the reverse stress test. That's they call it a reverse stress test. It's I finally refer to it as the how much rope do we have to hang ourselves with test. They call it reverse because it really takes all those steps and kind of works backwards. It says, hey, how bad would it have to get before our capital in the future reached a certain critical threshold, like the minimum to be well capitalized or adequately capitalized, or even just how much would we have to have in losses throughout our portfolio before our capital came down to any internal target level that we have at the board that triggers, any board triggers that you might have at capital levels that are above the PCA thresholds that the regulators have out there. Sean?
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Yeah, and so again, from that point, we just give you, we start with the base assumptions. We do allow you to tweak, some financial projections, your portfolio, other assumptions. But again, to literally run a stress test, you can come in here and hit see results, and
Yeah,
you have
it's
one,
run.
but then you can better fine tune it.
There's definitely everything that needs to be every input that goes into the tool, every assumption that needs to be made. We've made kind of mid-range assumptions and put them all in here and allowed you to modify them. But the second you click on the credit stress test, it has been completely run for your bank with those with the results. And then you could go in and say, hey, I think our net interest income or our fee income was a little bit, overly large over the last year. We think that's going to come down a little bit, so you can tweak those assumptions. And because it's an interactive tool, one thing that I think takes a huge amount of time from a banker's standpoint is when you're using a third party like us for this type of a tool, a lot of times you plug in tons of inputs, tons of assumptions, and then you run the whole tool. And then you get this output, this kind of static PDF output report, right? And then if you want to change something, you got to go through the whole list of assumptions and inputs again, change maybe only one thing, then run the whole thing again, and then print it out and put them side by side. It's an exhausting iterative process. I've been part of it more times than I care to admit. The way our tool works, as soon as you change any input or assumption, the entire tool recalculates itself on the fly, meaning that you can change any input and immediately toggle back to see test results and see how much impact that change in assumption had on the entire thing, including all your financial projections, capital ratios in the future. This is extremely helpful, not only from a time saving standpoint, but to see, where are my bottlenecks, right? Where are my triggers? It seems like we are really sensitive to increases in loss rates in this particular segment of the portfolio, or no matter what input we have here, it's pretty much irrelevant on the overall results. So we're not going to take a lot of time fine tuning, sharpening the point on this assumption because it doesn't change much when we change it. Knowing that and being able to toggle between those inputs and results in real time shortens that process and makes it a lot more efficient. Sean?
Great. Yeah, thanks, Steve. And just a reminder, again, the stress test is a board, responsibility, right? The idea the regulators had here was that in the last crisis, there was a disconnect in the autopsies of the banks that failed between the level of risk that the board understood the bank to have and what the bank actually did have. So the idea with the stress test was to alert the board to those guardrails, right? What in fact is your capital cushion? And so that's what our test defines. After that, you may realize, or you may be asked, you may need to stress a particular portfolio at the loan level status, but this is a very good first step for every bank because it does establish what that capital cushion is before you'd breach well capitalized, adequately capitalized, or critically undercapitalized. And so it really does give you that information as a starting point to understand what your capital position is and how much in losses you could absorb before you might need to go out and raise capital. So again, I think it's a very good proactive risk management exercise that a lot of our banks do. The point I always make with our customers is we've made it easy for you to run, so run it, because you may not have been asked to do a stress test yet. If you have one, they will probably not push back on what you're doing. If you don't have one, they may prescribe something entirely different for you to do, which may involve more time and money, which you could have eliminated if you put something in front of them and then made them tell you why it's not sufficient. And 9 times out of 10, they're not going to tell you that. So again, I think it demonstrates proactive risk management and does inform you and the board of what that capital cushion is. All right. So then finally, we have, if everything we've done in QwickAnalytics, you don't find as helpful or have it laid out the way you want, the add-in tool lets you do whatever you want and put all the information that we have in QwickAnalytics right into your own spreadsheet. So this is the ultimate catch-up tool, right? If you, like I said, you get to define your own spreadsheets, you get to design them, do whatever you want. We give you the information to do it. Steve, what would you like to add here?
Yeah, probably. I'll just demo it in Excel for a minute so you can get a feel for for how that works and show a couple of the newer additions to it. Share screen, right in Excel here. Excuse me. All right. So when you click on, when you download it, if you're not familiar, you download the QwickAnalytics Excel add-in from the website. And when you do, you'll get a nice little tab here for QwickAnalytics. You'll log in just like you would to QwickAnalytics. You don't have to be logged into the website to then log into Excel. You can just open up Excel, use your same credentials. The only thing you'll need, obviously, is connection to the internet in order to pull the data from QwickAnalytics. A couple different ways to, well, many different ways, but the two basic ways that you might be pulling data is, let's say you want to pull a handful of data points on a peer group. So I'm going to search, I can create a peer group, or I can just go to search banks. These are where your custom peer groups you can find right here in the add-in if you want to just pull up a custom peer group you've already built. But if you just, again, let's just pick all the banks in Alaska. There's only 6 of them. Use these banks. So I just pulled up the banks in Alaska and I want to know what I can select data now. So I come here and this gives you, as soon as it pops up, this is comprehensive. This is all the fields in our entire database: bank data, holding company data, public company data from 10Qs and Ks, which we also have aggregated data from, and credit union data. If I wanted to come to bank data and click on highlights and say, I want net charge-offs and I want pre-tax ROA, you can search for fields here as well. So if I start typing in ROA, so you have all the different ROAs and ROAEs and whatnot. Let's say I want those guys and I want them for this period. That's fine. I'll just use those 2 fields. And boop, there's net charge-offs and there's ROA pre-tax for the institutions that I've pulled. Once you have this data, you can come in here, you can change the period. Let's say you wanted, MRQ instead of last 12 months. And let's say you wanted it to be as of 9/30/2022, you can change the date. And then all you have to do is hit refresh. Takes just a couple seconds and boop, it just updated all that data. Once you have this data, this is now just a standard fully functional Excel spreadsheet. So you can pull a ton of data into, let's say, like a raw data tab here. Then you can create a formatted tab and link to it and do any sort of analysis that you want. So other people who don't have QwickAnalytics can certainly, it's a regular, you can save the file, you can send it to them. They wouldn't be able to obviously update, refresh data, but it would still be a completely viable Excel spreadsheet for any and all purposes. The other way to consider looking for data is if you just want to pull up, let's say a balance sheet or an income statement for the last 5 years for your bank, or for, or do a side-by-side, right, of current balance sheet for you guys, current balance sheet for a competitor down the road. That's where you'll use these, what we call these QA templates or custom templates. Let's say I click on the QA templates. All right, so I'll do it for Camden. There we go. And let's say I want a balance sheet and an income statement, and I want all my yields and costs. And I want it for the last 4 quarters and the last 3 years. And I hit download data. You'll notice it's creating a tab for each one of those. So here is 4 quarters and 3 years worth of a balance sheet. And in the standard order that you'd see things on a balance sheet, assets, liabilities, then an income statement, in interest income, interest expense, net interest income, kind of in the same an order you're familiar with for the last all these same periods, and then yields, all your yields and costs where they're relevant. So it's a different way, right? This is kind of more like pulling up and creating financial statements over time with a bunch of fields for a specific institution. You can come down here and add another field to the bottom, and so select more data and search for that data. Or if you're not looking for a full balance sheet or an income statement, and you want to say there's 50, I want to pick these 5 or 10 fields and have those fields show up over all these periods, instead of choosing a kind of our pre-built balance sheet or income statement templates, you can just build your own, a custom bank template. And here again, you'll search for the institution that you want, and you can just start clicking individual fields and periods, and then download the data. And it'll be just like the last one, but instead of a whole balance sheet, it just has all the fields you want down one column, and then the periods across. And so depends on how you want to look at data and what you want to do. Those are the 2 basic ways where you'd be pulling financial data from an institution or a group of institutions. There are certainly other ways. The Excel add-in also has M&A data. It's got public market data. So not only do we get all the call reports for banks and for holding and for credit unions and the small and large parent only PCO from at the holding company level, but we also get all the consolidated Y9Cs if you're interested in looking at those, and we have 10Q, 10K data. We actually also scrape data directly from institutions that announce do earnings announcements, right? So there are some institutions that they don't file with the SEC, they don't have Qs or Ks, but they have press releases every quarter, and we actually scrape the data directly from the press releases for all the institutions in the country that announce them, make them public, and we have a different place where you can aggregate and look at that data as well. So pretty much every piece of public data at any institution level is available within the platform. And there's a great little quick start guide here, which is a PDF which kind of walks through exactly how to use the Excel add-in, and it's a great resource as well. There's another little bug here you can click on. If there's some issue that you've got going on, you can click on report an issue, and then that'll come right to us and we can look at it very quickly. Another great thing is the chat feature. So if you're on here, if you're looking at a page, it's top of mind right now and you have a question about something or want us to look at something, you can click right on the chat box. And most of the time during regular business hours, we have someone right there available to help, a real person right here, available to answer your question or get right to Sean or I or somebody else who can answer your question and get super quick turnaround or real-time service on any of the questions or anything that you might be wanting to ask us about. Sean?
Thanks, Steve. All right, so I know we're on the hour, so we'll kind of move through these last few slides quickly. We kind of covered all this through Steve's presentation and demonstration. There's, like I said, there's a side-by-side analysis, but essentially, I think, you can see there's, a lot here, a lot more to come. And again, thank you very much for participating in the maiden voyage here of this QwickAnalytics Coffee Talk. Our normal CECL Coffee Talk will be back in January. We'll certainly, again, have more interactive exchanges around QwickAnalytics. We'll be doing specific webinars again on the stress test here in the first quarter. So with all of our webinars, please register because you'll always get a copy of the slides and a link to the recording. So, certainly appreciate all of you joining us today. If you have any questions, certainly reach out to us. at info@quickrate.com. Steve, any final words before we let everyone go today?
No, I just thanks everyone for dropping in for a bit today. And if we don't talk to you beforehand, hope everyone has a great holiday season. And we're getting right back at it in January.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you all again for participating today. Happy holidays to everyone, and we will talk to you in January. Have a great weekend. Bye now.
Thanks, everybody.